People think diving the RMS Titanic is glamorous. It isn't. It's cold, dark, and terrifying in a way that's hard to explain unless you've been down there yourself. The wreck sits almost 2.5 miles below the Atlantic, where sunlight doesn't exist and the water pressure could crush a submarine like a soda can. Everything down there feels wrong. Sound travels strangely, the darkness feels thick, and the ship looks like it's still dying. I had been on 2 Titanic dives before the one where we found it. Both times we used the same research sub, Artemis II, a 3-person deep-sea vehicle designed for long-duration wreck exploration. The crew that day was small, just 3 of us inside the sub, Dr. Kessler, the expedition leader, Miles, the pilot, and me. We were supposed to document structural collapse in the aft section of the wreck. Nothing unusual, just another deep dive. That's what we thought. The descent took 2 hours. At around 3,700 meters, the last traces of natural light disappeared completely. After that, the world outside the sub became pure black. Only the beams of our floodlights cut through the water. Particles drifted in the light like underwater snow. Miles checked the sonar. Approaching the debris field, he said. Dr. Kessler leaned forward. Lights to full. The wreck appeared slowly in the darkness. First the scattered debris, then sections of rusted hull. Finally, the Titanic itself. Even after a century underwater, the ship was enormous. Its broken bow rose out of the seabed like a ghost city. The lights from the sub washed across collapsed decks and twisted railings. Rusticles hung from the metal like frozen blood. We drifted slowly toward the open promenade area. That's when Miles noticed the sonar anomaly. "Something's moving," he said. Kessler frowned. "Probably fish." But the sonar blip wasn't acting like fish. It was too big, and it was circling the wreck. At first we couldn't see anything outside the viewport, just darkness. Then something long slipped past the edge of the light, a thin shape, silver. Miles leaned closer to the glass. "Did you see that?" I nodded slowly. It had looked like an oarfish, those deep-sea ribbon fish that sometimes wash up on beaches, except this one had been far too large, and it hadn't moved like a fish. It had turned its head, watching us. The sonar blip came closer, then something appeared at the edge of the wreck, a long body drifting upright in the water. At first I thought it was tangled debris, then the floodlights fully illuminated it, and I realized it was standing, or hovering. The creature was easily 20 feet long. Its body was thin and ribbon-like, like an oarfish. Silver scales shimmered across its length, but the upper half was wrong. 2 long arms extended from its torso, human arms, ending in webbed hands with long fingers. Its head was narrow and pale, the mouth stretched slightly wider than a human's, and its eyes glowed faint yellow in the darkness. The creature tilted its head, studying the sub. Then it turned slowly and drifted back toward the Titanic. Miles whispered, "What the hell is that thing?" Dr. Kessler didn't answer. He was staring at the wreck, because the creature wasn't alone. Dozens of them began appearing along the Titanic's hull, long silver bodies sliding out of broken windows, hovering in the empty promenade, crawling through shattered doorways. They moved through the wreck like it was home, like a reef, like a nest. One of the creatures grabbed the railing with its long fingers and pulled itself upward. Another slid through the broken grand staircase opening. They weren't exploring the Titanic. They were living in it. The sonar alarm suddenly started screaming. Miles checked the screen, his face drained of color. "There's something under us." I looked out the viewport. The darkness beneath the sub began shifting, a massive shape rising slowly from the seabed beneath the wreck, something far larger than the silver creatures. The water around the Titanic started moving. The smaller creatures turned toward the same direction, watching, waiting, like they were expecting something to wake up. The shape beneath the ship rose higher, then our floodlights hit it, and the Titanic itself shifted slightly on the ocean floor. Miles whispered, "That's not debris," because the thing beneath the ship was moving, and the silver creatures living inside the Titanic were gathering like they were protecting whatever enormous thing had been sleeping under the wreck for the last 100 years. For a few seconds, nobody inside the sub spoke. The floodlights illuminated the Titanic's rusted bow, but now the wreck didn't look like a graveyard anymore. It looked like a structure built on top of something alive. The massive shape beneath the ship shifted again. The seabed puffed clouds of silt into the water as something enormous dragged itself slowly across the ocean floor. Miles pulled back on the thrusters. "We should leave," he said quietly. Dr. Kessler didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the creatures crawling along the Titanic. "They're not attacking us," he murmured. "They're guarding something." One of the silver humanoids drifted closer to the sub. Its long ribbon body undulated gently as it approached the viewport. Up close, the creature was even stranger. Its face looked vaguely human, but stretched. The jaw slightly too long, the cheekbones too narrow. Thin red fins ran along the sides of its head like delicate feathers. Its glowing yellow eyes stared directly at me through the thick glass. Then it placed one hand on the sub's hull. The fingers were thin, almost skeletal, webbed with translucent skin. The creature tilted its head, studying us. Miles whispered, "Tell me that thing doesn't understand what we are." Then the sonar blared again. The shape beneath the Titanic surged upward. The entire wreck groaned. Metal screamed as parts of the ship shifted across the seabed. The silver creatures reacted instantly. Dozens of them swarmed downward toward the rising mass, not attacking it, guiding it, helping it, like ants clearing space for something larger. The water darkened with disturbed sediment. Then the floodlights caught the surface of it. At first I thought it was part of the Titanic's hull, a massive curved wall of metal rising out of the seabed. Then it moved, slowly. A colossal eye opened. The thing beneath the wreck was alive. The eye alone was larger than our sub, cloudy, ancient. The lid peeled back slowly as it adjusted to the sudden light. Miles immediately cut the floodlights. The sub fell into darkness. "Lights off," he whispered. "Lights off." The creatures outside the sub went still, hovering in the water, watching the enormous shape rising beneath the Titanic. "Doctor." Kessler stared at the sonar screen. The numbers were climbing rapidly. The thing below was still moving upward, still waking up. The wreck groaned again. One of the Titanic's collapsed funnels shifted several meters across the seabed. Miles turned the lights back on, and the entire scene came into view. The Titanic was resting across the creature's back. The ship hadn't simply sunk onto the seabed in 1912. It had landed on something that had been sleeping beneath the mud, something so large the wreck looked like a toy resting across its spine. The silver humanoids gathered around the rising creature in huge numbers now, hundreds of them, their ribbon bodies coiling through the water as they swam along the massive shape, protecting it or preparing it. The eye beneath the Titanic blinked slowly. Then another one opened, farther down the creature's body. Then another. Miles backed the sub away carefully. "We're leaving," he said. Dr. Kessler finally nodded. "Yes, now." The sub's thrusters pushed us backward through the dark water, but the movement had already attracted attention. Several of the silver creatures turned toward us. Their glowing eyes followed the sub as we retreated. One of them suddenly darted forward, fast. It struck the hull with a sharp metallic clang. The sub rocked violently. Miles shouted, "Hold on!" The creature hovered in front of the viewport again. Its mouth opened slightly. Rows of needle-like teeth glinted in the light. Then it spoke, not with sound, but with a vibration that passed through the metal hull of the sub, a low humming noise that made my teeth ache. Dr. Kessler clutched his head. "What is that?" The creature's glowing eyes stayed locked on us, and inside my mind, I heard the words, broken, ancient, slow. "You woke it." Behind the creature, the colossal body beneath the Titanic began rising fully from the seabed. The wreck shifted again, metal tearing, rusticles collapsing like rain, because whatever had been sleeping beneath the Titanic for over a century had finally opened its eyes, and we were still sitting right on top of it. Miles slammed the thrusters forward. The Artemis II lurched backward through the dark water, propellers whining under the crushing pressure of the deep. Outside the viewport, the silver creatures moved faster now. Their long ribbon bodies twisted through the water as they circled the rising mass beneath the Titanic. But they weren't chasing us. They were moving toward it, toward their awakening giant. Dr. Kessler was still clutching his head. "What did it say?" Miles demanded. I swallowed hard. "It said we woke it." Behind us, the wreck groaned again. The Titanic shifted several meters as the enormous creature beneath it lifted higher out of the seabed. Chunks of rusted metal slid down the creature's back. Entire sections of railing snapped and fell into the darkness below. Hundreds of them now, some gripping the Titanic itself as it tilted, others swimming alongside the creature's enormous body like attendants. One of the giant eyes beneath the wreck turned slowly toward our retreating sub. The pupil narrowed, and the entire ocean seemed to hold its breath. Miles whispered, "Don't move." The sub's thrusters cut out. We drifted silently in the water. The creature's eye continued watching us. For a moment I thought it might attack. Then the silver humanoid that had touched the hull earlier swam between us and the eye. Its long body hovered protectively in the water. It made the same humming vibration again, that painful, resonating tone. Inside my skull, the voice returned, "Leave." Not a request, a warning. Behind the creature, the Titanic groaned again. The wreck began sliding down the giant's back, a century-old graveyard shifting off the body of something that had been sleeping beneath it. The bow of the Titanic tipped downward. The entire structure tilted dangerously. Miles cursed. "If that thing rolls, the debris field is going to crush us." The silver creatures reacted immediately. Dozens of them swarmed the wreck, using their long arms to guide it, slowly pushing the Titanic away from the rising body beneath it. Not violently, carefully, like workers stabilizing a collapsing structure. Dr. Kessler stared in disbelief. "They're saving the wreck." "No," I said quietly. "They're clearing it." The Titanic slid slowly off the giant creature's back. The ancient body beneath the ship continued rising. More of it emerged from the seabed. Ridges, fins, massive armored plates covered in coral-like growth. The thing must have been older than the wreck itself, older than the deep-sea ecosystem that had grown around it. The last of the Titanic finally slipped free. The broken hull settled onto the seabed beside the giant creature. 100 years of history pushed aside like debris. The creature straightened, fully awake now. Its enormous body coiled upward through the water column, rising toward the darkness above. The silver humanoid swam alongside it in formation, escorting it, protecting it. Miles restarted the thrusters. "We're leaving before that thing decides to follow us." The sub turned away from the wreck, but before we left, the giant creature spoke, not aloud, but through the same crushing vibration that passed through the hull and straight into our skulls. A voice so deep and ancient, it barely felt like language. "You, disturbed. The den." The silver humanoid nearest the viewport watched us carefully. Then the voice continued, "But the ocean is wide." The massive creature turned away, its colossal body disappearing upward into the darkness above the Titanic. The silver creatures followed, vanishing one by one into the black water. The wreck settled quietly back onto the seabed, alone again, like nothing had happened. Miles pushed the thrusters harder. The sub began ascending toward the surface. None of us spoke during the climb, because we all realized something at the same time. The Titanic had never just been a wreck. It had been a lid, 100-year-old cover, holding something asleep at the bottom of the Atlantic. And now, that cover was gone. We didn't stop ascending. Miles pushed the Artemis II harder than I'd ever seen him push a sub before. The thrusters whined as we climbed through the black Atlantic, leaving the Titanic and whatever we'd just woken far below. No one spoke for nearly 20 minutes. Only the hum of the ascent motors and the slow ticking of the pressure gauges filled the cabin. Dr. Kessler finally broke the silence. "Record everything you remember." His voice sounded thin. "We need to document." Miles cut him off. "You think anyone's going to believe us?" Kessler didn't answer, because deep down we all knew the truth. They wouldn't. The first hour of the ascent passed quietly. The sonar showed nothing around us, just empty ocean, but around 1,800 meters, the alarms started again. Miles leaned forward. "Something's moving." A shape appeared on the sonar, long, thin, fast, then another and another. My stomach tightened. They followed us. Miles adjusted the lights. The beams cut through the dark water behind the sub. At first, nothing appeared, then a silver shape slid into view. One of the oarfish humanoids. Its long ribbon body twisted gracefully through the water as it approached the sub, but this time it wasn't alone. 3 more drifted into the lights, then 6, then dozens. They weren't attacking. They were escorting us, swimming around the sub in slow circles as we climbed. Dr. Kessler stared at them through the viewport. "They're making sure we leave." Miles nodded. "Or making sure we don't come back." The water slowly grew lighter as we ascended. By the time we reached 700 meters, the creatures began drifting away. One by one, they turned back toward the depths, returning to the Titanic, returning to their den, soft, controlled. Inside my head, the voice returned. Surface. People. I swallowed. What? The creature's eyes didn't leave mine. Do not return. The vibration stopped. The creature drifted backward slowly, then turned and vanished into the dark water below. We reached the surface 2 hours later. The support ship hauled the sub onto the deck under gray Atlantic skies. The moment the hatch opened, the crew started asking questions. How was the dive? Did you get good footage? Anything unusual down there? Miles just shook his head. Nothing worth talking about. Dr. Kessler looked like he wanted to argue, but he stayed quiet, because we all understood the same thing. Some discoveries aren't meant to be shared. 3 weeks later, the footage from the dive was reviewed by the research foundation funding the expedition. Most of the cameras had malfunctioned during the encounter. Static, interference, unusable data, but one external camera had remained active. The one mounted on the rear of the sub. It captured something during the final minutes of our ascent, something none of us had seen, because we had been looking upward, trying to escape. The camera had been pointing down, toward the darkness we left behind. The video shows the Titanic resting quietly on the seabed, still, silent. The wreck exactly where it had always been. Then the water behind it shifts. Something enormous passes beneath the wreck, so large the Titanic tilts slightly from the current. Then another shape appears, then another, then dozens, massive bodies moving through the deep Atlantic trench beyond the wreck. Far larger than the creature we woke, far older. The final frame of the footage shows a single enormous eye opening in the darkness behind the Titanic, watching the sub ascend toward the surface, watching the world above, because it turns out the creature beneath the Titanic wasn't alone. It was only the first one to wake up. The Foundation tried to bury the footage. Officially, the dive report listed equipment interference caused by deep-sea electrical anomalies. The sonar data was archived. The raw camera files were sealed, but word spreads in research circles faster than people think. Within a month, 3 different institutions contacted Dr. Kessler asking about the dive, not because of the creature we saw, because of the movement in the trench behind the Titanic, the shapes, plural. 2 months later, the Atlantic started behaving strangely. Fishing vessels near the Titanic debris field began reporting sonar shadows the size of islands moving beneath their ships. Deep-sea cables running across the mid-Atlantic ridge started failing. Submarine crews reported hearing low-frequency sounds traveling through the water that couldn't be identified. Not whales, not earthquakes, something slower, something deliberate. The recordings all had the same pattern. 3 long pulses, bloom, 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 then silence. 6 months after our dive, another research sub was sent down, not by our foundation, by a private deep-sea mining corporation interested in surveying the wreck area. They didn't contact us. They didn't listen to warnings. They just descended. Their last transmission came 4 hours into the dive. The pilot reported something strange on sonar, large objects moving along the trench floor. Then the radio went quiet. When their support ship pulled the tether camera back up, the footage showed only darkness, and one brief image. The Titanic wreck sitting quietly on the seabed, and something enormous sliding beneath it. So large the wreck looked like a barnacle stuck to its back. Dr. Kessler called me the night he saw the footage. "They're migrating," he said. "Who?" "The things under the trench." My chest tightened. "Toward where?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he sent me a satellite map. The red dots marked recent sonar reports from ships across the Atlantic. They formed a long line stretching north, from the Titanic, toward the continental shelf, toward the coasts, toward the surface world. 3 nights ago, a deep-sea cable maintenance crew recorded something unusual. Their submersible lights caught movement in the trench far below the Atlantic floor. Not just one creature, hundreds, massive bodies moving slowly through the water, escorted by swarms of the silver oarfish humanoids, guardians, guides, the same ones we saw living inside the Titanic, except now they weren't protecting the den anymore. They were leading something away from it. Last night, I received another message from Dr. Kessler. Just one sentence. The Titanic wasn't a den. "What was it then?" I asked. His reply came 30 seconds later. "A hatch." And now ships crossing the Atlantic have started hearing something new. A sound traveling through the ocean floor. Slow, massive, regular. 3 pulses. Bloom, bloom, bloom. The same signal we heard when the creature beneath the Titanic woke. Except now it's coming from dozens of locations, all across the deep Atlantic trenches. Something beneath the ocean is waking up. Not one creature, an entire species, and the only thing that had been keeping them asleep for the last 100 years was a rusting shipwreck sitting on top of their door. At first, the governments ignored it. They always do. Ships disappear, cables snap, sonar anomalies appear on charts. Those things happen in the deep ocean all the time. The Atlantic is huge, and most of it has never been explored, but the pattern kept spreading. Within a year, cargo vessels crossing the North Atlantic began reporting the same strange phenomenon. Their sonar would briefly show immense moving objects beneath the hull. Not whales, not submarines, shapes that stretched kilometers long. Then the sonar would die. Every report included the same detail: 3 deep pulses traveling through the water. Bloom, bloom, bloom. Navies got involved after the first submarine encounter. A U.S. Navy attack sub operating along the mid-Atlantic ridge picked up something massive moving beneath them. The sonar operator initially thought it was a fault shift in the seabed, then the shape rose. The sonar return grew larger and larger until it filled the entire display. The captain ordered full reverse, but the thing beneath them moved faster. The submarine's hull sensors recorded the pressure change when the creature passed below them. The sub was 140 meters long. The object passing beneath them was 3 times that width, and the sonar recorded dozens more moving behind it. The crew heard the pulses through the hull. Bloom, bloom, bloom. Then silence. The submarine surfaced immediately and left the area. Officially, the report was classified. Unofficially, every Navy in the Atlantic now knows the same thing. The trench isn't empty anymore. Dr. Kessler and I met again 3 weeks ago. He looked older than when we last spoke, like someone who had been staring at a problem with no solution. He slid a photograph across the table, a satellite image of the Atlantic. Red dots covered the map now, hundreds of them. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Migration routes." My stomach tightened. "They're leaving the trenches." He nodded, following something. "What?" He tapped the center of the map. The Titanic's coordinates. Then he dragged his finger west, toward the continental shelf, toward the coastlines of North America and Europe. "They're not hunting," he said quietly. "They're gathering. 2 days ago, the first one surfaced. Not near the Titanic, not in the open ocean, but off the coast of Newfoundland. A fishing fleet reported a massive shape rising from the deep water during a foggy morning. The fishermen initially thought it was an iceberg. Then it moved. A colossal silver body broke the surface, miles long, covered in ridged scales that glistened under the gray sky. And swimming alongside it, hundreds of the oarfish humanoids, escorting it like priests guiding a god. The fishing vessels fled immediately. None of them got close enough to film it clearly, but one man managed to take a photo. The picture is blurry, shaky, but one detail is unmistakable: the creature's head and the massive eye that opened slowly when it reached the surface. That eye was looking at the land. 3 hours later, the creature sank back into the Atlantic, but the sonar readings didn't disappear. They multiplied. More shapes rising from the trenches, more escorts surrounding them, more pulses traveling through the water. Bloom, bloom, bloom. Dr. Kessler called me again this morning. His voice sounded hollow. "They're not migrating randomly." "Then where are they going?" He paused, then said something that made the back of my neck go cold. "They're moving toward every place where humans built cities near the ocean." I didn't speak, because I already understood. The Titanic had been sitting on top of one hatch, just one. A door sealed shut by accident in 1912. But there are thousands of trenches across the oceans, thousands of places where something ancient might be sleeping beneath the seabed. And now, one of those doors has opened. The others are starting to answer the knock. The first coastal evacuation happened quietly. No public announcement, no news coverage, just a handful of routine naval exercises declared along parts of the North Atlantic. Fishing fleets were redirected, cargo ships rerouted. Deep-sea drilling platforms temporarily shut down. Officially, it was a marine hazard investigation. The first coastal evacuation happened quietly. No public announcement, no news coverage, just a handful of routine naval exercises declared along parts of the North Atlantic. Fishing fleets were redirected, cargo ships rerouted, deep-sea drilling platforms temporarily shut down. Officially, it was a marine hazard investigation. Unofficially, governments had finally seen the sonar footage.